What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another video. So in today's video, we are going to be talking about free will. So I'm sure that you read the title, and basically what I wanted to look into was whether or not we have free will, because I've heard theories on both ends. Obviously, clearly it seems that we have free will. I mean, I can do what I want, I can move my hands and stuff, but there's also a really interesting theory that we don't have free will. One theory is that it may seem that we have free will because we can choose to do things. And that is the whole idea behind free will. Like, clearly we can choose to do things. I can choose to get up and go open my door. I can choose to do all these things, so we should have free will, right? But there is a very interesting sort of metaphor or story that can kind of help explain how we could not have free will. So the whole story behind that is, let's say that we have a cup of coffee, okay? And I choose to put sugar in my coffee. So I choose to put sugar in my coffee because I like sweet things. But then it's like, did I choose to like sweet things? So no, I didn't really choose to like sweet things. That's just who I am. It wasn't a choice to like sweet things. That's just kind of how I was born or made, I guess. Because some people like to drink their coffee straight, you know what I mean? So it's really just, it's just a choice. So my motive to put sugar in my coffee is that I like sweet things. That is the motive behind that action. So I had no control over the motive for the action. I had no control over whether or not I was going to be born liking sweet things or whatnot. So in a way, people think that because you don't have a choice of liking sweet things, the motive you couldn't control. So in a way, you're not really choosing to put sugar in your coffee, because by putting sugar in your coffee, the motive is controlling you, and you didn't choose that motive. So in a way, you're not really deciding to put sugar in your coffee. But now, what if you choose to not put sugar in your coffee? Say that you normally put sugar in your coffee, but you choose not to put sugar in your coffee. Wouldn't that prove that free will exists? That's what a lot of people think. They're like, well, I'll just choose not to put sugar in my coffee. That shows free will exists. But not totally, because say that I choose to not put sugar in my coffee, despite wanting sugar in my coffee, then there must be a motive behind that action. There must be a motive behind not wanting to put sugar in my coffee. So now let's say that the motive behind not putting sugar in my coffee is to prove that free will does exist. That's my motive behind that action. So I defy my own internal desires, which would be me wanting to put sugar in the coffee, to prove that free will exists. So what would be the point of that? What would be the motive behind that? It could be that I'm too scared or uncomfortable with the idea that I don't have control over my actions. At the same time, did I choose to be scared of the fact that I can't control my actions? Because I didn't really choose that either. So once again, the choice was still not determined by me. It was determined by a motive that I can't even control. That's the whole idea behind it. Basically, that the motives are what's dictating our actions, and we don't really have control over these motives. So it's like, well, who's in control then? A lot of people think that free will is actually just an illusion, and some scientists actually think that it's one of the greatest human illusions is that we have the choice of free will. Now, you might be wondering, well, this is all fine and dandy, but is there any like scientific evidence of this? And actually there is, and that's where things start to get interesting. So we're going to go ahead and look at that. In the 1980s, scientist Benjamin Libet conducted experiments that seemed to show that the brain registers to make a decision before one consciously decides to move. So what they basically did is he put a button, and he would have like a button or have them flex their wrists or something like that, and he would have them measure when they consciously became aware of doing that action. And he was also reading the brain scans through like an EEG signal, so he could monitor what the brain was doing. And basically what he found out was that for an average of a half a second before the participants are aware of the decision to move, the brain has already decided what it's going to do. And he called this readiness potential, which is basically that the brain has already decided whether or not it's going to what it's going to do before a person is consciously aware of making that choice. And it's a very small delay. Like I said, it's only a half a second. But in a way, if you were to slow everything down, that kind of shows that the brain is actually deciding before us. So we're not really choosing. The brain is choosing for us, and then we are kind of stuck with that and then consciously thinking that it's our own thought, because like I said, it's only half a second. So it's gonna feel and move as if it was free will because it's all happening so fast. Now, I also want to touch on the other side of that. So this was a very interesting study, but there was some problems with the experiment. And the reason I want to bring this up is because it's good to understand both sides of what we're talking about. So on one side over here, we have him proving that the brain is ready to act before we are consciously aware of what it's going to do. So that's kind of what he's shown. But on the other side of that, there was a few potential problems that could have been with his experiment. And I kind of want to touch on those so that you guys can kind of see that it wasn't perfect. And it really is, a lot of it is really up to debate. And that's what we're kind of doing in this video, debating on whether or not it is real. And that's why I want to show you guys all the evidence that we have. So some problems with the experiment were that it relies on the participants' own recording of when they felt the intention to move. So one issue is that there might be a delay between the impulse of the act and the recording of it. After all, this means that if you're shifting your attention from your own intention to the clock that was measuring them doing this, it's basically a debate of whether people are able to accurately record the moment their decision was made. So our subjective awareness of decisions is very unreliable. If you can try this experiment yourself too, you'll become aware that it is actually very difficult to pinpoint the moment at which you make the decision. So there is a little bit of error. So you could try flexing your wrist, and seeing at what point you make the decision. It's very kind of hard and complicated to do, especially when there's like a timer and clock measuring how long it takes you to do all this. So that is why it can be a little bit shady on whether or not this is true or not. But that is his experiment, and these are some potential problems that could have happened with the experiment. So do what you will with that information. However, I want to touch on another scientist whose name was Daniel Wagner. So Wagner was another scientist who conducted some experiments to see about free will. Wagner showed that, and he argued, ease in which the illusion can be created in everyday feeling consciousness, that it's basically a trick, that free will, the idea of free will is our mind basically playing tricks on us. He quoted it as the mind's best trick, to be able to make it feel as if we have free will, even though we don't. So that's kind of his whole view on that. He agreed with the Benjamin Libet experiment that we just went over, so the one where they're hitting the button and flexing the wrist. He did agree with that research. So he came to the same conclusions, that the brain is acting before we're consciously aware of it. So he's another scientist who thought that it was just an illusion, that free will was just an illusion. It's a trick that our mind kind of plays on us to give us the feeling that we have control over what we're doing. Now, I want to talk about another scientist, and his name is Roy Bumster. I don't know how to say his name. Roy Bumster, I'm not sure. But anyways, so he also was in the science of free will, but his argument kind of focused on a different area of free will. He wasn't really too focused on whether or not free will was real or not. He was more so focused on how it affects people if they believe in free will or if they don't. So for example, if you have a group of people over here that don't believe free will is real, and a people over here that do believe free will is real, they kind of act differently. So that's his whole thing. He wanted to see if people who believed in free will and people who didn't believe that free will exists act differently because of those beliefs. Basically, that was his whole experiment. So, but this is actually crazy, because what he found out is that people who did not believe in free will were shown to be more dishonest, to be more selfish, to be more aggressive, to reduce their own happiness. They recycled less. Basically, they were just more of a jerk, honestly. Like, they were just more of a jerk. People who thought free will was not real were just more shitty people, honestly. And I think that's kind of funny, because it's almost like these people were like, well, I can't control my actions, so I'm just going to do whatever I want, and just no repercussions, because it's not really me controlling anything. And we're just kind of jerks. But people who did believe in free will, it didn't show any changes at all. So it didn't change anything. People who believed in free will, it didn't change how they act. It just showed that people who don't believe in free will tend to act more aggressive and stuff. So basically, it was just showing that whether or not free will exists is not really the question that we need to be asking ourselves. It's whether or not you believe free will exists. And that is what is actually important, because even if free will doesn't exist, our mind is playing a trick on us as if it does. So to us, that would almost be real because we're not going to be able to tell we don't have free will. I mean, when you're sitting in this room watching this video, I mean, you could click off this video, you could do whatever you want. That's what it feels like to you. So free will feels real. So in a way, it is real to you because that's how you're perceiving it. So overall, the two sides that we have here is that all of our actions could be determined by our environment, by our DNA, and everything else, everything other than ourselves. That is the whole theory, that we don't have free will. All of these decisions are based on how we grew up, the trauma that we have, how we react to things, what we were taught as children. And the idea of free will could all just be an illusion. And those few things are what's actually dictating how we live our life. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because it has been shown that it is better to act as if we have free will. Even if we don't, it's better for us to just believe that we do because there's no reason to believe that we don't. It only adds aggressiveness. It only adds people being dishonest. So there's really no benefit to not believing in free will. So if you're going to pick one to believe in, I would say believe in free will because that is what is the most realistic in, I guess, our day-to-day lives, and the most beneficial for your mental health is to believe that we have free will. So even if we don't, it's just better to believe that we do at the end of the day. And if we pretend that we don't have free will, I mean, people will continue to do stupid things and be like, well, I don't have free will. I'm not in control of my actions, so I can kind of do whatever I want. Like, I didn't really choose to do that. And that is just kind of not a society that we want to live in. It's definitely an interesting topic, though. But I would say, if you're watching this, you have free will, as far as I'm concerned. Move through life as if you have free will. Spread love to people, and that's really all you can do. But there is a chance that we have no free will at all, and that's also a very interesting and kind of scary way to look at things. So, thank you guys for watching. That's what we have for today. My question for you is, did you decide to watch this video? Did you make it to the whole video, or did you click off first? I mean, were you the one who decided to do that? Did you decide to click on the video in the first place? Now that is a question that we just don't have the answer to. But nonetheless, I will catch you guys in the next video. Much love, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.